What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's going on with tomorrow as we have some very important data coming out that's going to affect the entire markets. And also what I think could end up panning out when we look at the current CPI numbers. But before I break anything down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, now let's talk about what's going on with SPY. SPY got a very, very nice pump for the first 3 hours of the day, going all the way up to about this 503 resistance, reaching 503.5 before we got this nice rejection perfectly at that top. After getting this rejection, we came all the way back down to 502, kind of hovered around here for a couple of hours before we got a nice end of the day sell off back down towards the 500 area. So SPY got a nice little pump and dump today. The question is, will we continue to push up, or are we about to see a big rug pull? Well, one could kind of argue we have this like falling wedge that's forming on SPY right over here, and this does open the possibility of a nice bounce that could be coming for tomorrow, but nothing is guaranteed just yet. We can't make any guarantees about what will happen or even remain like super certain, because it's going to depend a lot on CPI, and that could invalidate a lot of these patterns that we're seeing. So I'm going to first talk about CPI and other factors like that before I break down the charts for you guys. What on earth is actually going on? So as far as CPI goes, it's going to be coming out for tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, an hour before the market opens. It's going to be very important. Now, CPI is expected to be around 2.9 to 3.1%, or around 3% overall. That's quite a decrease from the 3.4% CPI we got for the month of December. CPI is coming out once again for the month of January for tomorrow. That's what's going to be released. And that's what we're expecting year over year. So it's going to be very important. We'll have to see how it goes. Month over month, CPI was around 0.2%, and that's what we're expecting it to be again. So we'll see if we get some similar numbers to last time for the month over month metrics. One of the reasons why we're expecting a big drop in CPI is because during this time last year, for the year over year number, I'd say that the numbers were calculated a little bit differently. There was the change that was made, so they're kind of adjusting for that. So we'll see how this ends up affecting everything. On top of this, for core CPI year over year, we're expecting 3.7% on both ends, the consensus and the forecast. And then for month over month, for the month of January, we're expecting 0.3% for core CPI. We'll be watching to see if we end up getting numbers like this. That's the only main piece of data that's coming out, and it's going to be very, very important for the markets. So, what are we seeing from the data thus far? It's very simple. This has been heavily dictated by housing. You can't forget about that. And then also, if you look at the trends for the overall numbers, the purple line you see right there is for core CPI, which is all items without food and energy. And there's a very, very clear downtrend that's being respected right here on this chart. So there's a very good chance that this could continue. Core is going to be fine. So there's a very, very nice chance it's going to be decent. But the issue remains with CPI for all items, because we actually saw a slight increase during the month of December. If you look at November, so if you look at the overall trend, first off, there's this nice clear downtrend right over here, a nice clear downtrend that happened. But generally, when we see these little increases in CPI like this right over here, December relative to November, it doesn't just happen for 1 month. And other examples, like right here, we got this little increase that lasted for about 2 to 3 months before we got this little drop again. So the question is, with CPI being known for being quite sticky sometimes, are we about to see this thing actually increase again? There is a risk of that, or is it about to come back down? That I can't really answer, because it depends on the numbers, and the numbers are very manipulated. I don't fully trust that the CPI numbers are honest and 100% accurate or perfect. So you have to be open minded. You have to be ready for anything just to be safe. There have also been times in the past when CPI was decent and the market still fell, or we got a bad CPI and the market still ran. So it could be all over the place. All that's happening with this data is this, guys. These institutions are using the data as an excuse to move liquidity around. That's all it basically is. This data in itself is not everything, it's just going to be used as an excuse. So that means we're expecting some high volatility and a big reaction, and we're going to be watching to see which way the market ends up breaking towards after CPI comes out. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. I do want to note that right now, the Fed is essentially letting us know that it's very unlikely they're going to be giving us a cut in March. This could be adjusted. The market is thinking that there's an 85% chance they're going to keep rates the same, and there's almost no chance that they're going to give us a cut thus far. It's actually only at 15%. So it's very, very low. This could be adjusted depending on CPI. That's the importance of it. And whatever the market does is going to actually affect these numbers. So this is what the Fed watch tools kind of like telling us. We're going to have to wait and see what the numbers tell us for tomorrow. For earnings, we have a couple coming out right now. Nothing too significant. I'm not going to talk too much about them. I just talked about Monday.com in the morning. This did relatively well on EPS and revenue, but unfortunately, their revenue outlook was kind of weak, so we saw this thing fall. For tomorrow, we have earnings such as Shopify and Coca-Cola coming out. I'm going to be watching Coca-Cola especially. That's a big one. It's going to be very important. After the market closes, we have Airbnb, Upstart, Robinhood, Lyft, and a few others. Those are also going to be very important, especially Airbnb. That's going to be after market close, so watch those very carefully. For Wednesday, we have like Sony and a couple of others. You can see Sony right over here, and everything else is like less significant. But then for Thursday, we have the notorious Coinbase, Roku, and DraftKings all announcing their earnings. That's going to be very important, especially Coinbase. So I'll be watching all of those. That's going to be very interesting. For now, this is what we're looking at for tomorrow: Shopify and Coca-Cola. So that's it for now in terms of data. I'm not going to talk much more about it. It's been a kind of hectic day, at least for me. I just want to focus on the chart now. What is the chart suggesting? So it's very simple. The chart on SPY does look bearish, but the chart in itself is not everything. CPI is going to matter more because this could always be a trap and this could always be a ploy by these institutions to get retail to sell a bit so they start buying the dips. I did see some big buy orders, but that doesn't guarantee anything yet. So if we're bearish after CPI comes out, and the most likely possibility is that we have to get a hot CPI to get that. Most of the time, that's what's going to happen. We get a hot CPI and the market comes down. If CPI, let me just show you the numbers. If it's above the forecast and expectation around like 3.2, 3.3%, that could be a little bearish. If it's above 3.5%, that's going to be a lot more bearish. If it's above that number, we need this to be around 3% or lower for this to be bullish for the market. So remember that 3% threshold, and above 3.5% would turn even more bearish. So just remember that. If we get the bearish numbers, SPY could actually continue to break down. If we lose 500, we're going to be sinking towards 498 and then 496. If we're bullish, you could argue we have a nice falling wedge-like formation. I could even draw this kind of like tighter, if anything, but it doesn't really matter. Nonetheless, we have kind of like a falling wedge-like pattern that's developing. And if we're bullish, we're going to be looking for a break back up towards 503. And if we break that, 505 is going to be our next target. So watch this high right here. If we break this, 505 is coming. We'll be watching to see which way SPY goes. There is a chance the market is turning here, but nothing is guaranteed till we get the confirmation. So do not be too confident just yet. All right, so we'll see what CPI causes. I wish I was a fortune teller and I could give you guys the answers, but I can't really do that. All I could really do is kind of tell you about both sides and what you should be watching for. Now, Tesla is looking a little bit weak right here. So Tesla basically announced that they're not going to give us a refresh for the Model Y. There's also some news that came out that Stellantis has adopted their not their charger specifically, but the NACS standard for the charger, and they haven't really made a deal with Tesla, which is not the best of news. So that also came out. As a result of the news and the market selling off, Tesla also followed the trend with this big drop. So it's very simple. If we get a good CPI number, Tesla could easily push back up to at least 192.5 and possibly back up to the high up here. If we're bearish on Tesla after CPI comes out, we're going to be sinking back down to about 187.5. And if we lose that, I could actually see this thing coming down to 184 again, potentially even 182.5. But 184 is a real potential target if Tesla ends up failing. So we'll have to watch what happens after CPI. We'll be watching all of this very, very carefully. So far, things are looking very interesting on the chart. One could argue we have a nice falling wedge that's going to get a break to the upside again. It's always a possibility, right? So we technically have a bullish structure that could be developing if we get enough buyers and if we get the right data to push it back up. But nothing is guaranteed. The chart is only a part of the equation. Please remember that. And we'll just have to wait and see just to be safe. How about the QQQ? How is the QQQ looking? Just like SPY, we're continuing to sink. It's very simple. If we're bullish after CPI, I think we're going to retag this trend line. We could make our way back up to about 438, if not 440, if we get a good CPI. We need a good CPI for that to happen. We need CPI to be around 3% or below that. or even below the previous report, like at 3.1% would be fine. If CPI is well above 3.2%, or if it's even above like 3.5%, that's going to be bearish for the markets and this thing is going to sink. So for bullish, 438 is coming and even 440. For bearish, look for the rug pull back down towards 432. If we lose that, 430 is coming. So you want to be very careful right now, guys. The market's in a very, very dire state. What's going to dictate this? You guys know the answer. It's Nvidia. Nvidia and the QQQ have been running together very, very nicely. So if we're bullish on Nvidia, if we get a good CPI, there's an imbalance up here that's going to fill at 736. It's going to bounce and push up to 736 if we get a good CPI. If we don't get a good CPI, there's also an imbalance down here at 707. If we test that, we have to hold 707. If we lose the previous resistance becoming support right here. So I'm going to make this big. I know I'm sorry that there's so many lines. There's so many levels I watch on Nvidia. Let me change the color of this to like yellow. So that yellow, I don't think yellow is a good color. How about green? Okay. Guys, see the green line down there? We have to hold this green trend line right here. If we lose it, we're going to be sinking to 700. There's a risk of it falling harder. If we hold this, we bounce off this previous resistance becoming support, Nvidia could try to hold up for longer. So it's going to be key, the 707 area, if we get a rug pull. So make sure you're prepared for both sides, but be careful depending on CPI. How about Apple? How is Apple looking in my opinion? It's very simple. In my opinion, excuse me, Apple's looking bearish. It looks bearish right now, right? I called this head and shoulders as a possibility, and I told you that in order for us to invalidate this and turn bullish, we need to see Apple break out and get above the 190 area. Instead, we failed to do so. We failed to get back above 190, and we got the rug pull, and we lost our critical support at 188. Now we're approaching support at 186.5. So the chart does look bearish to me. Okay, there's a very good chance it's going to get close to 185. However, the same thing I said about SPY and Tesla applies. CPI could change that. If the market bounces off CPI, Apple's going to be pushing up for 188 and eventually back up to 190. If we're bearish after CPI, 185 is coming, if not even lower levels than that. What is the best thing to do? The answer is be patient, wait for it, and see which way we break once the data comes out. The data could be very unpredictable and could be very tricky, so always be open minded and be prepared for anything. But be careful with the markets, guys. Things are looking kind of critical. So, with that being said, I'm just going to go over a couple more just real quick. Let's talk about Rivian. If we get a nice CPI, I could see this thing pushing back up towards 16.8. If we get a bearish CPI, 15.9 is going to be coming, and we're going to turn bearish. I see us coming down towards, I could see it actually retesting this wick, so around 15.5 is coming. We could lose 15.9. If that happens, then 15.5 is coming. The chart is looking a little weaker, but just to be safe, we'll see what CPI causes. This does favor bears just a little bit more, so we'll just have to wait and see. For SoFi, the chart is still looking bullish. It's making higher highs and higher lows. If we're bullish, we have this imbalance to fill up here. I could see it getting closer to 9 if it keeps pushing. But if CPI gets in the way and we get rug pulled, 18.14, 8.14, not 18, guys. Sorry about that. 8.14 is coming. And if you lose that, $8 is coming below that. So do we get a temporary move back down to 8, or do we continue to push past 7.5 and get closer to 9? That depends on CPI. The chart still looks bullish from a technical standpoint nonetheless. For the Russell 2000, we look bullish. It looks like it's going to try to get to 205. From a technical standpoint, I called this out yesterday. I told everyone we have a nice inverse head and shoulders. Expect this thing to break 202 and possibly 205. That's what happened. We broke 202. So the chart looks bullish right now, but the chart itself is not everything. Okay? If we're bearish after CPI, I think it's going to retest 200 and 198. If we're bullish, 205 is coming. I'm in the middle depending on CPI, but I do want to call out that the chart is bullish. If we ignore CPI, it still looks bullish. So we'll just have to wait and see. For a couple more, let's actually talk about what else is there. Microsoft. Microsoft came back down. If we're bearish, 410 is coming. It is looking more bearish on the 4-hour time frame. If we're bullish, you want to see it make its way back up to 420. This looks to me like it might actually sink towards 410. It looks a little bit weaker, so we'll see if we get that 50 EMA retest. It's looking a little bit more bearish, but just to be safe, we'll wait and see what CPI causes. AMD got a nice bounce and came back down and looking kind of bearish. If we're bearish, 168 is coming. If we're bullish, we want to break back up towards 172 and get it back to about 175. We're looking a little bit more bearish on the 4-hour time frame. It does look like it's going to sink more. CPI could cause that. But once again, I'm always open-minded. So always be open-minded just to be safe. The VIX is trying to push to be bullish on the VIX. We want to see it break above our 200 EMA because we rejected 2 times off of this 14.29 area. So if we break that, we're going to break out more. If we fail to do so, we're going to come back down. So we'll just have to wait and see. For the dollar index, we're kind of flat right now. It's actually curling on the MACD. It has some potential to go up, but it's not that strong. It's still quite indecisive. For Coinbase, if we're bullish, you want to see it break 150. If that breaks, it could push up to 152. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose 145. If it loses that, 140 is coming. I'm in the middle with this. The chart is still bullish overall. This is still bullish. It looks like it could push more, but CPI is going to be another factor. We'll see how that affects us. For Google, if we're bullish, you want to see it break towards 150. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose 148 and sink to 147, and eventually 145. How does the chart look? To me, it looks bearish because we are starting to turn right now for a temporary drop. So just be a little bit careful. But once again, guys, just because we look bearish, technically speaking, doesn't guarantee anything for tomorrow. This does favor the downside, but just to be safe, we'll wait and see. Amazon looks like it's going to test 171.62. If we lose that, I see it coming down to about 170, then 168. If we're bullish, you want to see it basically bounce off this 172 area, or at least 171.6, and make our way back up to about 172.8, then 175. So we'll see what Amazon does if it bounces here and on that support right now. It is looking a little bit weaker, but just to be safe, I'll wait and see. And then for Meta, if we lose 466, we're going to be sinking towards 460. If we manage to bounce, we're going to be looking for a move back up towards the resistance right here around, this 470 area, 472. So in my opinion, this does look like it might turn down, but let's see what CPI causes. All right, so I went over what the technicals suggest for the market. Most of them are suggesting a pullback is coming. But I'm not going to promise anything because I know the pullbacks could just get bought up and this could be a trap for retail. That means that although I'm open minded to the possibility of a pullback coming, I'm always going to be open minded also because of CPI. I'm always going to be prepared for anything. So we'll just wait and see. Keep the pullback in the back of your minds. Market might turn a little bearish, might come down a little bit, but let's see what CPI looks like first, and we'll just have to see how tomorrow goes. So with that being said, thank you for listening. Have a great day. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you, and peace out.